With you wherever you go.
1460 WVOX.
Stay tuned for Time to Talk with host Jennifer Graziano of Zion Memorial Chapel and Cox and Graziano Funeral Homes. Jennifer is here to discuss a sensitive subject we all need to talk and think about. Here now is Jennifer Graziano and Time to Talk.
Good morning, Westchester. It's 9 a.m. on Monday, and that means time to talk with me, Jen Graziano. I'm a licensed funeral director who oversees my family's funeral home, Cox and Graziano of Oceanic in Greenwich, and the Zion Memorial Chapel of Westchester. Every Monday, I come to you discussing important topics and sensitive matters that all of us need to pause and reflect upon at some point. And through this show, I hope to provide a platform to do so. I am so gratified by the news of these states that are getting back to business. There seems to be some light at the end of the tunnel, although certainly not here in New York, sadly. But hopefully we will follow suit because, folks, it is time to do just that, get back to normal. But while we are living in this abnormal, my guests on the line today are going to provide some unique insights. I'm excited for the show because I have so many questions myself, but I'm joined on the line today by Captain Harold Earls IV and his wife, Rachel. Captain Earls is an active duty military officer. He's the commander of the Guarding the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, a graduate of West Point, which is dear to my family, as we have a cousin who is a graduate there as well, and some space on the campus dedicated to him. And his wife, Rachel, is a blogger, and together they talk about their journey as a couple that is not a typical journey. In the infancy of their marriage, Captain Earls climbed Mount Everest, and there were tests and trials and lessons learned from that apply, believe it or not, to everyday life and to also the crisis we're all facing here. We're spending lots of times indoors, lots of times in confined spaces with loved ones. We lack the ability to come and go as we please, or, to go take a ride and clear our heads because we're all just together. So their insights go not just from the top of Mount Everest, but into the four walls of our homes. So good morning, Captain, and good morning, Rachel.
Hey, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
I'm so excited to speak to you. So my question off the bat, did both of you climb Mount Everest, or, Captain, was that just yourself?
So that was just me. So actually, originally, to provide context, came up with the idea when I was a senior at West Point. And so at that same time is when I got engaged to my wife, Rachel.
Yeah, and as much as Mount Everest seems pretty cool, it's pretty cold and not something I would love to do.
I'm with you on that. And I'm all about a good exercise and a good walk, but I'm with you on that. The first year of marriage is trying enough, and let's just say that. And full disclosure, I am divorced, but it's not an easy time. It's a time of transition. It's a time of really learning about the other person. So when you take that normally difficult scenario and now you add your husband leaving to go on a dangerous journey, what were your thoughts on that, Rachel? Where was your head at the time?
Well, let me first say that I think it'd be surprising for most people, but you have to understand that I knew exactly who Harold was when I met him, and especially when he proposed to me. I knew that he loved adventure, and he was definitely that out-of-the-box person, and he was always going to pursue his dreams. So when he told me about Everest, I really wasn't surprised. In fact, we had just been planning a trip out to Africa to go be with the Maasai tribe right before. It didn't work out, but it wasn't a surprise at all, actually.
I think you touched on an important point there. You knew who he was. And the two of you are very young. So, normally we get into relationships and you see it so many times where you go in and then there becomes this expectation of your partner changing. But when you know who that person is and you choose them for that and you love them in spite of that, I think that is what the key to a successful relationship is. And you certainly demonstrate that. You didn't try to hold him back or dissuade him or change his mind. You supported that. And Captain, I'm sure you'll agree, that journey was made possible through Rachel's support.
Yeah, 100%. So I honestly grew so much just from watching Rachel and just how she loved me and pursued me during that time. For me, choosing to follow my dream like that, it was really the first time getting married that I had someone else in my life that I also had to think about. But the way that Rachel came onto my team from day one, I remember sitting there in my barracks room and I called her the first time when I came up with the idea, and I was expecting some pushback, but honestly, it was not what you expected. She, from the very moment, was like, hey, like, go get it, follow your dreams, and I'm going to be your number one teammate. And that's exactly what she did.
And again, I think, everybody looks for the secret, but I think you guys found it in the first 3 minutes of the show. So how long did you date before you were engaged, may I ask?
I think we had dated for about a year and a half before we got engaged, and then we were engaged for probably a little bit over a year as well. But yeah, okay. The thing about Everest and even about COVID-19 right now is that when you face a crisis or a trial, and we all face them, it could be struggling to get pregnant. I know that's something that couples struggle with. It could be an addiction of any kind. It's choosing to face that together, and instead of letting that separate you guys, let it pull you together. And that's what we really try to do, is just to remember that we're on the same team in every fight that we're in.
So I want to connect this to COVID because, when you look at this on paper and you're talking about a couple that, the husband goes to climb Mount Everest and the wife, patiently supports him, you might not immediately draw that parallel, but there are lessons to be learned. Let's go back a step. Captain, why did you decide to climb Mount Everest? I mean, just because something you always wanted to do? Was it a personal challenge that you yourself, needed to prove? What was the utmost motivation for that decision?
Yeah, so it was something that I always wanted to do, but it actually grew much more than that. So we were raising awareness for post-traumatic stress. And what I think, while our mission was a big success in that regards, I think something that I really learned, honestly, the hard way from Everest that is very applicable now is that, Everest, you see the physical dangers. Everyone knows the physical dangers. Just like this current moment that we're in right now, people can see the physical dangers. But what I think that sometimes we fail to neglect, and what I certainly did with Rachel and in our relationship, is the emotional and social impact that has on everyone, that had on my spouse, right? And I think that I failed at that time really to see and appreciate and have a sense of empathy for what my partner may be going through. While it may not be physical in nature, every one of us in this moment, emotionally, physically, we are affected by what's going on.
Well, you're a wise man, and Rachel, you're a lucky woman. No, but that's very true, because we often struggle with what we can't see. And there are people who are very literal in this world. And, if they can see the damage or see the impact, they can respond to it. But there's another realm of the intangible, and that is, the feelings and the emotions. And I credit you, Captain, because, the Army creates a rigidity and a very black and white way of looking at things. And not that that's the wrong way. I tend to be on that side myself, but there is another perspective. So I credit you for being able to look beyond what you can see and recognizing that there was an emotional sacrifice on your partner's end. How long were you gone on the journey?
Yeah, so in total it was 63 days, the expedition.
Okay. Now, both of you, what were some unexpected struggles that you faced? Now, Rachel, you stayed home. And did you have family nearby you? Were you totally alone? What were some struggles that you faced separately during those 63 days?
So as soon as Harold left, I knew that I wanted to spend that time focusing on my own dreams, because I knew if I were to stay at our house in my everyday routine, it was just going to be pretty depressing, honestly, and it could easily lead to resentment because it was just a house without Harold, right? And so I decided, I looked at my calendar that was completely empty, and I was like, you know what? I want to fill this up with life-enriching stuff so that this time is worth living for me. And so for me, that was traveling. So I planned a trip out to Guatemala, to Ireland and Scotland, and to see my friends in Nashville. And that really helped me through that time. not only having community by being with my friends, but really having those experiences that will be with me forever. So it's not just a time that I was missing my husband and being a little scared and frightened over that, but I was also making my own memories.
So, and again, channeling your anxiety in positive ways and doing things and making memories and carving out your own path and identity, very constructive ways that you pass the time. Do you feel that there were any mistakes made on either end during the Everest time in your life? Anything that either of you would have done differently? Were you able to, there was no communication, I'm assuming, so anything that you think hurt the relationship or anything that you would have changed or any regrets from this vantage point?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up communication. I think that we all learn, or especially I did, going through an extreme and unprecedented time. I think you learn a lot more, honestly, through failure at times. I know for me, I think communication on both fronts. One, it brings me back to we're at Camp 3. We talk about this in our book a lot about we chose not to bring communication equipment up the mountain. And so our team got in a very tough situation as we got higher and higher up the mountain and couldn't talk. We were very close to each other, but that communication wasn't happening. And then same with Rachel and I back home. We had a satellite phone, so I would call her often and talk to her in the tent. But there were things that we were missing, and I think that I failed to realize, the emotional impact that would have on us. I think that right now, just because we're sitting side by side and we're home together every single day together, doesn't mean that communication is taking place. I think that you still have to be very deliberate and conscious to do so.
Yeah, I love that. There's a part in our book where Harold talks about if he's trying to communicate with the other climbers on the team, they're in separate tents and the wind is whipping back and forth, and they just peek their head out the tent and they're trying to scream to the other team, and later on they're reflecting and they're realizing, oh, communication didn't actually take place. I might have been talking, but that understanding wasn't there. And what a life lesson to realize that it is way more than just talking at someone. It's being able to go dig deeper and say, okay, well, what are we actually feeling? What does this mean? Do we understand? Are we on the same page right now?
Well, communication only happens when the other party's listening and receptive. So talking is only half of communication for sure. So how did life go back to normal for the two of you? You come home, and is it just, let's start our marriage? Or were there challenges and struggles in that settling in adjustment period?
Yeah, well, you would think that we'd come back home and it would just be happily ever after. For us, I actually came back, I had frostbite on my toe, and about a month later, I went to Ranger School. So I think that our marriage was faced yet again with another challenge, right? Go to Everest for 2 months, come back, and then immediately go back to Ranger School. So for me, honestly, the growth really happened after Ranger School when I really had some time with Rachel. But it was pretty difficult for us to go to Everest and immediately follow that up with going to Ranger School.
Well, I think the two of you having that strong foundation, whatever else life is going to throw at you, I'm pretty confident that you've each found your partner, because I think no matter where you have to go, that understanding that, Rachel, that you have, allowing your partner to pursue dreams, allowing your partner to be themselves, and loving them for who they are with no expectations of change. So that recipe for Mount Everest, I'm sure, is what's carrying you through whatever life is going to throw your way. But let's talk about what life has thrown everyone's way right now. So the interesting part of the segment today is the tips and tools that you can give to couples and families applying this to their everyday life. Do the two of you have children?
We do. We have two little boys. We have a 2-year-old and a 10-month-old. And I'll tell you, too, one thing you mentioned as far as allowing, your spouse to follow their dreams, I would actually take it one step further. I think it's not necessarily allowing, but showing them that you are willing to fight for their dreams as well. I think that's one of the most powerful things that I learned from Rachel, was not just saying, approval of you pursuing your dreams, but more of hey, I'm going to help make this happen with you because it's your dream. Now it's my dream as well.
Absolutely. And that's the way it's supposed to be. So absolutely. And like I said, it seems so simple, and everybody, people spend tons of time, looking for answers or marriage counseling and therapy. And it's not that, not to knock any of those, but what you're saying is so simple and so correct. It's full support of another's dream and helping them take steps in furtherance of pursuit. Totally agree. So connect it now to people struggling, because we're all spending a lot of time together, and this is a world where we pick up and go at leisure. There's two-income households, people are working, there's single parents, there's babysitters, there's such a dynamic, and people just find themselves together. How would you apply the lessons that you've learned in your marriage to the current situation?
I think that we don't want to miss this moment. We can get swept up in that. You're right. Like, oh, maybe we're a little stressed out. There's a lot going on. We might feel stuck. Like we don't have that space. But let's reverse our perspective and think about, wow, what good can come out of this situation? What good can come for our marriage or our family by doing something maybe unique and out of the box? I mean, just yesterday, I threw a little prom for Harold because in this time together, it got brought up that he never went to his high school prom. And you know what? I was like, this is a perfect opportunity to do something special for my husband that we're going to remember forever. Because, when we all look back on this time of COVID-19, we're going to remember what happened. And so I want it to be good memories, right? And so I got some balloons together. I wrote a little book, and I made a sign asking my husband to prom. And then we got all dressed up and danced. And yeah, it's cheesy, but wow, what a memory that we're going to just cherish forever.
And our 2-year-old love
Absolutely. Well, you got a great prom date, Captain, so that's amazing. And what a good way. Again, Rachel, you seem to be cut from that cloth that you can channel negativity in a positive way, and not everyone is equipped with the tools to do that. So that off the bat is a life skill that could help you through anything when you're able to just see a silver lining and look at the bright side. And it's true, a positive mind just yields so many benefits on your physical person and on your overall outlook. There's two ways to look at this, like, oh my God, another day, or okay, it's another day. What can we do to make it a good one? So I credit you. That's it's inspirational, and it's not something that everybody is equipped to do. So give me some specific relationship advice that you have for couples that are quarantined together. So we know, being positive, making memories, using the time constructively. What specifically, I think you mentioned this, Harold, that you can be in the same house with somebody and you could not be communicating. So what are some tips for couple communication?
Yeah, great question. I would say do something today that is unexpected. So do something out of love for your spouse that they wouldn't expect you to do. It can be as small as just walking up and telling them that you love them and give them a hug and a kiss. It can be writing them a small note. It can be making their favorite meal. Something that is small that shows an act of love that's unexpected will go leaps and bounds, even confined in your house with the other person.
One of my favorite tools, something that Harold and I have done, is we have a reset word. Ours is actually recess because it sounds like reset, but that's for those moments when we aren't communicating well, we aren't understanding. And it's just that little reminder to remind us that we are on the same team. And hey, let's pause and let's make sure the way that we're speaking to each other is out of love, because in those heated moments you get frustrated, and it tends to not come out of love anymore. So that for us is just that little reminder, like, hey, let's come together in this moment. And it really does help us.
Yeah, sure.
So there are lots of ways that our listeners this morning can learn more about you. And you have this wonderful website, which I encourage everyone to visit after the show. It's www.earls.org, and that's EARLS, your surname, earls.org. And we talk about the book, which is A Higher Calling, which I'm going to get to in a second. But also, Rachel, you're a vlogger. So what are some of the content of your video blogs, that people, if they're inspired to come and watch, what will they learn from you?
Our vlogs are our everyday life, and we really try to just be honest about whatever we're going through. So it's the ups and the downs. It's the relationship piece. It's with our kids in it. So you see us from our very first child. When I tell Harold that I was pregnant, you experience those emotions with us. And then you see us, stumble a little bit as we're navigating parenting life, and that own mountain of itself I just want to be vulnerable with people so that as they're walking through life, they know that someone else is walking that with them. Because I think we can all tend to feel a little bit alone. And so this is my way of saying, like, you're not alone. I'm here with you, and let's do it together.
It has my prom night on there, too. Not a 4 p.m. day.
I think the vulnerability makes it real and makes you identifiable to people, and they can connect because it's not roses, it's not sunny, and it's certainly not now. There are some difficult, dark days for people, and isolation in and of itself, it's a scary, lonely place. Being vulnerable certainly lends to your credence, but people can purchase the book online. What inspired you to put this down on paper and write a book? I mean, clearly it's not like you both were lacking things to do. And was there a healing process in this for you? Was there a deeper connection that was formed in doing this between you?
I tell you, I think that how it all started out is I originally had wanted to write this book, kind of like a I Climbed Everest book, to be honest. But really it was kind of the way that Rachel and honestly through our faith and God kind of worked on this and saying, hey, there could be more than this. And that's what Rachel was saying. I think there's more to the story than just you climbing Everest. I think really where I think people can learn and where we grew the most was through our relationship through this and sharing it through the back lens of Everest. So I think that once we started to realize that is really when the book really started to take on its own turn. And I feel like we grew a lot just from writing it, just from going back and being reflective on that very unique experience that we had caused us to grow tremendously in our faith and in our relationship.
How many years are you married currently?
In June, it'll be 5 years.
Ew.
5 years. Well, congratulations and a happy premature anniversary. But 5 years later, looking back, do all the same principles still apply, that it's really just about communication and the support of each other's dreams? And as you can see, then that makes those dreams merge into one dream. It's not his goal, her goal, it's our shared goal. Does all of that still apply, or has it evolved into something else? Is there some new wisdom that you see from this vantage point?
Yeah, no, for sure. I'll tell you, adding kids to the mix, it definitely throws a curveball just to life and to marriage. But I think it comes back to, like, you have to work at it. All those principles still apply, but you still have to put in the work. It's not like, hey, I have the answers. There's plenty of marriage books out there. There's plenty of self-help things, but it comes down to, like, hey, I'm willing to put in the effort in my spouse during whatever time we're going through. I mean, raising kids, like a 2-year-old and a 10-month-old, that just gets crazy sometimes, but it's putting in the effort into your spouse and saying, hey, I choose you every single day.
I think it takes work, and I think that's what the oversight is. People just take for granted that their significant other is just there, but, you spend time professionally building yourself up, advancing yourself in your career. You dedicate time to that. You spend time with your children, raising them and grooming them into who you'd like to see them be, and you spend time on yourself. We take care of our grades, fix ourselves physically. A relationship does require effort just the same as everything else. Like you said, Captain, it takes actual work and a cognizance of this is something that requires time, effort, dedication, and work, and not in a daunting way, but in a positive way. And I think you've illustrated that to our listeners during this show. So some wonderful insights. So remind everyone again of how they can connect with you. There's a YouTube channel, the blog, the website, the book. Share some places where we can find Captain and Rachel Earls.
Our YouTube channel is Earls Family Vlogs. You can just type that in on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram at Rachel Earls and Harold Earls IV. And then, of course, on our website, www.earls.org, to get our book, A Higher Calling, which, of course, you can also find on all the places that books are sold, like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Christian Book, IndieBound, Target, all of those places.
And A Higher Calling is the name of the book. So if you remember nothing else, A Higher Calling, type that in. And you donate a portion of proceeds from the book sales. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So we're making donations in twofold. One, to people in our community who are struggling with COVID-19. For us, we never wrote this book to make money. It was all about making a difference. That's actually how Rachel ends every one of our YouTube videos, is to love God, love people, make a difference, and be thankful. And so we see this as an opportunity to help people during this time.
Well, that's a wonderful thing, and I credit you for that. And, I wish we had more time, because you touched on something of faith. And I think that when faith is at the center of any relationship, it's only going to grow stronger. The belief that there's a higher power and there's something beyond us and above us certainly keeps us grounded and helps put life in perspective. I'm sure you'd agree.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, hey, you talk about more time. We got a whole book about that.
Well, I would certainly love to have you back. You're coping with the crisis wonderfully, but I think you'll cope with any crisis in life wonderfully. You have a wonderful, wonderful foundation. When you look back, do you still remember the feelings that you had when you were climbing the mountain and when he was away, Rachel, or does it seem like a distant memory?
It's odd, to be honest. Every day I have to just remind myself, like, wow, we really went through that. But it was emotional, and you'll definitely experience that in the book. And there were some really hard years that we walked through. But yeah, it definitely stays with us.
I'm sure it does. A higher calling. Read more, everyone. Thank you both for your time and your insights. And this is Jen Graziano. Thank you for taking the time to listen as we took the time to talk. Stay safe, stay sane, and stay strong, everyone. Bye-bye.